Okay, let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining today's Ziflow product webinar. My name is Mike and I'm going to be one of your hosts. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. And if you are a regular attendee of our webinars, yes, I did change our housekeeping slide. Attendee lines are muted, and that's just to cut down on background noise like leaf blowers and homeschooling kids. Our session today is being recorded and a copy will be sent out after we finish up today. We'll take questions at the end of today's presentation, but feel free to enter them at any time during the course of the webinar. My co-host likes to fly by the seat of his pants sometimes and take those as they come in. So if we can, we will. Speaking of will, let's meet our hosts. As I mentioned, my name is Mike Peterbaum, the CMO here at Ziflow, and I'm joined today by Will Liu, our VP of Ops, who leads both our operations team as well as our customer success team, which is responsible for making sure our customers get the most value out of new capabilities like the ones we're going to talk about today.
Hi everyone, excited to show you some of the new features that Ziflow has released, and Mike is right, will demonstrate on the fly, so feel free to ping any questions that you may have.
Great, awesome. For those of you on the call who aren't as familiar with Ziflow, I'll give you guys a quick pitch really quick. We are singularly focused on innovating in the online proofing space. So that's all about helping agencies and brands worldwide solve their most pressing review and approval challenges. And if this is something that's new to you and your team and you're looking for help with, you can find more information on our website at www.ziflow.com. All right, enough for the pitch. Let's get into it. If you've been on our webinars before, first of all, like I said, you've noticed my new housekeeping slide, but you're also probably familiar with our 3Cs concept. And for those of you who aren't, I want to just kind of walk you through really quick what we found to be, as a result of an industry survey we did last year, 3 of the core challenges that creative marketing teams face every day. First is content. There's more media types and more volume than ever before. And within that content or within those assets being reviewed, there's more collaborators. And the second and third items on this list, collaborators and compliance, which is the third C, kind of often tightly coupled. So these collaborators are distributed. So we're obviously working in a new normal now. No one's able to kind of stand up over the office walls or the cube walls and kind of shout their feedback across a busy agency floor. You know, everyone's remote, or most people are remote, I should say, and there's more of them. And there's more collaborators because, you know, there's more stakeholders, there's more media types, and there's more specialty, team members. But also that kind of gets into the third C, which is compliance. And compliance has become the new normal around marketing. And this is not, you know, maybe many of you are thinking of like GDPR or privacy, but no, this is around, kind of 2 things, 2 buckets as I like to put them in. One is brand compliance. So for organizations that have very strict brand and logo and messaging guidelines, but also those organizations, and we work with quite a number of them here at Ziflow, are organizations that are under the auspices of regulatory compliance. FTC, SEC, the FDA, product packaging, disclaimers, the fine print, if you will, on a lot of things. So that does ramp up the number of collaborators as well. But then there's also compliance. And our product releases, we continually try to address these 3 core challenges to make the lives easier for creative marketers every day, because we understand that things are only getting harder. Nothing is really getting easier anymore. So that's really where we kind of focus our efforts around our product releases. And I'm going to walk you through those kind of 3 concentrations now. So, and please, Will, jump in here as you see fit. Let's start with the new capabilities to ease content reviews. And that'd be the first C. And first, I'd like to talk about is the Ziflow plugin for Adobe Premiere Pro and Adobe After Effects. This is a big addition we made recently to the Ziflow kind of product family, if you will. So with this plugin now, video editors can really speed up their video production workflows by creating, editing, sharing, really the core activities that they do every day. They can do that with their Ziflow proofs directly from within their Adobe video editing environment. So we understand really the video user is quite unique, and they like to stay in their apps as much as possible. It keeps them in their workflow, their flow state, if you will. So this is a really big addition for us, and we're really excited about bringing this to the Adobe community. So for all of the the video editors out there, or the project managers on the call today that work with video editors who like to live in their Adobe products, definitely want to check out the Ziflow plugin for Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects. Moving on, so for teams working with large blocks of content being reviewed, the bulk edit of proof properties, it makes it really much easier to manage your creative content in Ziflow. So for those, for any of the proof properties that you've created, you can now do bulk edits of those to make it easy for classification, for searching, and really for your reviewers too. This could also be considered really a collaboration capability as well. But making it easier to work with large blocks of content. A very popular feature request that was also added recently, and that's the ability to proof live password protected sites. And this is a great addition for creatives and web developers using Ziflow for website projects. We have quite a number of customers that use Ziflow for website projects. As many of you know on the call, but if you don't, Ziflow supports proofing static website pages or live website pages. With regard to the live website pages, or I should say live websites captures, we can now support password protected sites. So it loads in the UI. It's a pretty cool addition. And it's actually, like I said, a very popular feature request that we've had that we were able to address recently. We've also added some measurement tool enhancements with both new measurement units as well as more granular units within those metrics themselves. So for those of you that are using Ziflow or that would like to use Ziflow for things like product packaging or large scale format print, going from small to big, this is a great addition that you'll want to check out, and that's available in all the editions. We've also added auto compare for video proofs. We're gonna talk about, or Will, I should say, is going to talk about video proofing a bit more in depth in just a few minutes. So I'm going to leave that one for Will to talk about as part of our advanced video proofing capabilities. And lastly, a really powerful addition. This is a really cool one, and I want to make, Will, please jump in here if I don't nail this description, because I know that you have a lot of use cases as well. But this last one's a really powerful addition for creative teams working on multi-channel creative campaigns. I think that's my kind of big hook for them, is being able to compare proofs from within the same folder. This is pretty cool because now you can check out two different proofs side by side. Before side by side was limited to versions within the same proof. And this is great if you want to check out how different assets for a single campaign look in context of each other. We found that many of our customers were hacking this by simply opening up a new window of Ziflow and putting them side by side. And once we learned that quite a number of them were doing that, we figured, it was time for a more elegant solution. Will, I don't know if you want to maybe share another use case that you've come across based on this capability now.
Yeah, I think for comparing proofs in the same folder, there's a couple of different use cases that I've seen our clients take advantage of. The biggest one's probably comparing to a template. So if you are doing a localization or adaptation project, or if you are basically doing a refresh, that's where comparing proofs in the same folder becomes really powerful. You want to make sure that the small edits are actually small edits and big architectural changes weren't being made. So you can compare with a completely different project, you can compare with a template, you can compare with a different proof altogether, and make sure that you're only changing the minute portions that you want to change based off of the localization, the adaptation, or the actual refresh that you're doing. Obviously, you can compare completely different things as well, videos with scripts, storyboards, things like that. But I would say typically we're seeing it compared with templates or refreshes.
That's great. Yeah, I knew you'd have a better example. So those are just some of the new additions that we've added to ease content reviews. Let's get into now talking about easing collaboration. As we talked about before, the number of team members working together on creative projects could cause inefficiencies if they were using what I would call suboptimal collaboration methods. So let's talk about what we've done to make it easier to collaborate. And first, and probably most dramatic, is our mobile UI update. If you haven't tried out Ziflow yet on your mobile device, and that's tablets included, you should definitely check that out today. Our native mobile UI, which doesn't require an app install, is really what I would consider a high fidelity reviewing experience for you and your team members. Obviously, with a more distributed environment than maybe we're used to, maybe not as many people are like running through airports and need to access it, but there are plenty of people who are maybe sharing their machines with loved ones now as homeschooling's happening, and you need to do a review and you've got your phone handy. This makes it a really easy use case for that, and it's a really elegant, but yet at the same time powerful solution for reviewing proofs on the go. We've also added, again, this is around making collaboration easier. This could also maybe even consider maybe making it easier for content review, which is smart list filtering. And this really what it does is helps you and your collaborators get to their preferred heads up display really from their dashboard faster. Project managers love this because it really allows them to kind of quickly check out where projects sit based on different attributes of those projects. So this one was, I would say, definitely, kind of gets into like the more infrastructure play, but really has a lot of compounding benefits when you get these things set up nicely. One kind of geeky cool feature I personally love is the ability to now set up custom help links in the product. And these custom help links could be our help pages or your internal guidelines. I mean, really anything. I was on a call with a customer recently who uses one of their custom help links. And this is actually a great example of kind of similar to what Will just talked about with comparing a template to a proof. Well, they use one of the custom help links to link to an internal brand guideline handbook. So, no excuses for the designers. The guide brand handbook is right there within the proofing product. So, if there's any other questions about a particular font or a color or a sizing or a, the distance between, the logo and, copy and text, they have a link directly to it, which is pretty cool. Kind of a little bit of, facilitation, also a little bit of excuse elimination, I would say. But I think it's a pretty cool use case. Moving on, we've also kind of gotten a little bit more cosmopolitan, if you will. We've added some new UI languages we've added in recently. The Ziflow UI now supports, in addition to English, of course, Chinese, German, French, Japanese, and Brazilian Portuguese. This new capability, I should point out, was added for all Ziflow editions, which is pretty cool. So for those of you that work across borders, been thinking about maybe opening up, if you're an agency, maybe opening up your agency to another country. We can definitely help support you with at least the proofing aspect of that with our new UI editions of these languages. Customized stage emails, moving on. This lets you give specific direction to specific teams or groups that are included in a stage in your workflow. Well, it can be used for anything, but that's, I think, a use case that I'm probably most common with. So, this is great if you want to detail specific requests for that review stage, maybe to let them know where they are in the workflow or maybe what's even coming after them even. Will, I don't know, not to put you on the spot, but do you have any other examples of a pretty good use case for customized stage emails?
Yeah, I would actually say, taking a step back, we allow you to adjust the email templates on a few things. New proof to review, new proofs to review, new version, and stage started. The,
Mm-hmm.
the main benefit here is that you can really customize these and personalize these with details from the proof itself. So you can add in information such as the proof name, the proof owner, any of the properties or metadata you may be associating with the proof if you're using custom proof properties. So now you can actually you can automate the personalization of the stage emails is the best way I found to phrase it. And I know that sounds a little counterintuitive because how do you automate something that's personalized? But what I mean by that is you can start including relevant information about the proof itself without needing to have someone manually adjust that proof notification email. So if you have a proof property for project type or asset type or client or brand or whatever it may be, you can dynamically have that information inserted into your stage start email or your new proof email from the proof details itself just by building it into your template. There's a lot of flexibility here. You can add things like your version number, you can add things like the reviewers, the stages. So you can really go a lot of different directions here, but the best way I found to describe it is you can automate some of the personalization.
I think there's probably a few email marketers on this call, Will, that would probably argue that you can automate personalization. But that's a great example. Thanks, Will. And lastly, one thing I wanted to make note is that we do now make it easier to fine tune notifications as well. If you want to change the rate and the frequency of notifications, you can do that directly from the proof list. Kind of a small change, but again, something that, if you want to really, I'd say adjust collaboration one way or the other, or notifications specifically one way or the other. You can do that now directly from the proofs list. You don't have to go into the proof. So if you're making kind of quick wholesale changes across maybe a project or the last few handful of proofs, that makes it so much easier. So before we jump into the product, I just want to talk about our last area, which is new capabilities to help prove out compliance. And compliance, again, can mean a couple of different things to different organizations. Brand compliance, obviously, and brand handbooks and brand guidelines for many organizations are, they're very strict, and they are a Bible of sorts for that organization. So the other side of the coin to that one is also, regulatory, and being able to prove and share out, or basically be able to prove out that you have control over your review and approval process, and that the right people at the right time were notified, had access to a particular asset, and took the action that they were required to take. So we've added in some new capabilities. So first, our pre and post decision notices. So now, before and after a proof, we've added in on both ends of the proof. You can provide a notification. Think of it as if you wanted to, a type of terms of service acknowledgement. Maybe directing your review team as to what is expected of them, and then after the decision has been made, also you can indicate maybe what next steps are as well. So this is completely customizable by the Ziflow user and the customer, and can be used in many different ways. Will, not to put you on the spot again, but do you have any interesting use cases that you've seen with regards to the notices?
Yeah, two parts. With the pre-notice, one of the things that we've seen is you can use it for a couple of different ways. If you're an agency and you're inviting your clients to access, it's a good way to get them to agree to additional terms, maybe note your privacy policy specifically for your clients. So if you're using this with external users, it's a great way to capture acknowledgement. On the brand side, what we've seen is it's a good way to share brand guidelines or additional information. So you're making people aware of this. And then on the post decision notices, really it's a great way to notify someone once a decision submitted. So this way they know that they are affirming that they have taken specific action, or what we typically see is it's a reminder to check something. So you hit approve, and your post decision notification reminds them to make sure that they've checked this X, Y, and Z, and that is all being completed as part of their approval decision. So really I've seen it used as two mechanisms. One is to get acknowledgement that they are adhering to the brand guidelines, that they are following something or they're agreeing to something. But the other is to really serve as a reminder. So as they're submitting their decisions, it's reminding them to make sure that they've checked X, Y, and Z.
That's great. Thank you, Will. That's a really good example. We've also added granular access control. So this is definitely an administrative-y feature. So for maybe users on the call today of like a HubSpot or a Salesforce or even a Marketo, where you get the fine-tuning capabilities of what you allow within the application, which different sections that users can access. We've made it very fine-grained to control access to creating, viewing, editing, deleting proofs. The account administration levels, what they can see and do with folders, settings on workflow templates, for example. So being able to to turn this on and off really quickly with toggles and checkboxes is a new addition that we've added to the product. And again, this is just all about being able to demonstrate control over who sees what and what they can see, not only within proofs, but also then within the application itself. Late proof reminder options. So we've extended these. This is again just kind of adding into like where I feel it does kind of fall into compliance, is being able to set according to your really your business logic or your business rules, more customized reminder options. So This is again kind of falling into the category of making sure that the right people were notified, re-notified, reminded again. But this is also it's super helpful. Will and I did a webinar about best practices last year. And one of the best practices that we talked about for creative review and approval was set a deadline. You'd be surprised about how many people don't set deadlines. And this is one of those, the late proof reminder is one of those things where, on top of that, being able to compound that value of having a deadline is reminding them of that. So another kind of new addition, another kind of, I would say, infrastructure type of addition is, for a lot of customers, their security policies preclude authorizing an entire domain to send emails. So that's when you're setting up your Ziflow custom domain. So now we provided the option to authorize only a specific email address that Ziflow will use to send notifications. This actually was a pretty popular request that we've added in recently. Especially for large agencies that don't want to like open up the entire domain, or large brands for that matter. This is a really helpful capability. And then folder sharing, we have spent, I would say, not kind of quite a bit of time on. I mean, I think folder sharing is different things that you can do with folders. So folders are very powerful, and I would say for us, Ziflow, it's actually a big differentiator of ours. We know that we want to support the largest agencies of brands in the world. We have to give them a file structure capability and a management of that file structure, and granular controls over that file structure to make it efficient. And this actually, I would say, cascades all the way down to not only making it easier for collaborators, but also easier for content review. This is definitely I would say folder management is something that we invest in quite heavily that spans all 3 C's. For this particular, or maybe the use case I'm thinking of, this is when it comes down to managing, many proofs spread out across different accounts. So if you're working with an external, customer or client team, or you've got multiple accounts within your own organization, you know the pain, right? So being able to share content between these accounts is necessary, especially if you want to reference like related designs, like Will talked about before, projects or other items. So to improve really what is content sharing, we've now made it possible to share folders with external users in any account who are listed in your account's people list. So for those of you on the call that have multiple accounts, I think this probably speaks directly to you. But if folder sharing was something that was actually limiting you from maybe expanding and using more accounts with either clients or within other business units within your organization, definitely want to give us a call, because we can walk you through some really powerful, I would just call it folder management more so than folder sharing. We've got other capabilities we've added as well. We'd definitely love to talk to you about that.
Yeah, I think folder sharing is kind of one of the huge areas that we've made, and we're kind of lumping it all into one grouping here with folder sharing enhancements. But if you follow the Ziflow product releases, you'll probably notice that we have done a ton of folder sharing enhancements throughout the last year. We've incorporated things like subfolder sharing. We've introduced more granular permissioning when you're actually doing your folder sharing. As Mike mentioned, we have introduced the concept of cross-account folder sharing. So what we really want to do with the folder sharing is to allow you to have more control over how things are shared within your account. And you will be able to control this on the folder or the subfolder level. And when you're sharing your folder with someone, you'll be able to choose what they can do within that folder. So can they only view proofs that have been shared with them? Can they view all proof versions? Can they view and manage the proofs? So we're really allowing for more control on the folder level as you start organizing your proofs without you needing to share everything within that folder structure.
Yeah, as Will shared, and as I mentioned before, this is a pretty powerful area within the product. So if this is something that you're really curious about, definitely reach out. We have a lot that we can show in this area. Speaking of a lot more that we can show, at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Will in a second. We're going to kind of do a deep dive product demo around some key capabilities added, and I'll just introduce them very quick, and then I'll turn the control over to Will. We're going to focus on 3 core areas here, and actually, Will, I'll let you introduce these, and then I'll stop share.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, we want to introduce three core areas today. If you're familiar with Ziflow's release cycle, we do product releases every month. So we introduce new features and new functionality into the platform every month. We thought it'd be a little bit much if we tried to cover every single feature or every single enhancement that we made throughout the last year. So we want to focus on three specific areas, looking at some of the video proofing enhancements that we've made and talking through the logic of what these video enhancements do and how to use them. So today we'll cover advanced video proofing, some of the new features and functionality available there. Intake forms. Intake forms is probably one of my favorite areas in Ziflow. Mike and I have done an entire webinar on intake forms, how it works, why you should use them. And we've made a lot of enhancements to intake forms since the release last year. So I want to go over some of the enhancements, what it allows you to do, and how best to take advantage of them, and workflows. Again, workflows is probably one of my favorite areas in Ziflow. If you aren't using workflows, we highly, highly, highly recommend it. If you attended our benchmark webinar last month or 2 months ago, we actually found a really interesting benchmark where proofs with workflows versus proofs without workflows turn around at about 35% faster. So saving you an average about 20, 30 days per proof once you apply a workflow there. And we've introduced even more enhancements there that help you streamline your workflow process. So we'll talk through and I'll show what these enhancements are and the best way to maximize them.
Yeah, so I just gave you control, Will, and while you bring up your screen, one thing I want to point out is if you are interested in seeing or learning more, especially like about workflow and the intake forms and video, actually, for example, we have done a webinar on each. So if you go to ziflow.com/resources, you should be able to see, you can filter down by webinar. And then you can see all of our most recent webinars. We do have one, as Will mentioned, on intake forms. We have one on workflow, and we actually have one on video production as well. So all the areas that we're actually going to dive into here, we've got a little bit more expansion on. So please do feel free to check that out. All right, Will, I'll hand it over to you. And you're still on mute.
That's why you do a tech check, everyone. Okay, can you see my screen, Mike?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So I can't remember the order that we said that we would present these things in. I think it was video proof, intake forms, and then enhanced workflows. So let's go ahead and take a look at video proofing first. Now, we've introduced a lot of new features into the video proofing to really enhance the functionality here. A couple of the key areas is going to be, we have adjusted your ability to actually view the format of the video itself. And by that, I don't mean switching around the codec, but I mean the time code. So previously, if you were doing video reviews in Ziflow, we would display the video simply in time. So minutes, hours if you have hours, so hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. Now that's great for a macro level for video reviewers, but for video producers, they needed even more accuracy than that. So we've introduced two additional time formats here. One being time code, so you can actually see not only the time interval, but the exact frame that the video is within that second, as well as just frames. This allows you to really more accurately provide your feedback on the videos itself. And for video editors or video producers, they're more easily able to incorporate your feedback because now they know exactly what frame you made it on or what the exact time code is. Now you're going to notice two things here. As I change the format, it changes in the bottom navigation here on my playback. So I know if I want to view it in time code, or frames, it'll change it in my playback options. But if you take a look at my comments, it'll also change it in my comments to reflect to provide consistency. So if I'm used to looking at videos in frames, I can switch my format to frames on the bottom left, and my comments will reflect what frame it is. If I prefer to view the time format and time code, I can switch this to time code. And again, not only does it change in the playback, but it'll also change in the comments. So it provides a consistency based off of the format that you prefer seeing. And it'll, again, adjust here as you're playing the video, but also adjust in your comment pane. A couple of additional things that we've introduced is playback speed. So now you can adjust your playback. I know for video editors, video reviewers, and video producers, playback speed is always one of the most touchy issues you can have. But we do allow you to adjust your playback speed. You can go all the way down to quarter speed or all the way up to 2x speed, depending, are you reviewing a long form video or short form video. Here you'll be able to adjust your playback speed. This is really great if you're doing a really short spot and you want to really get into there and review it for accuracy. You can slow down the playback speed. Or what we've seen is if you're reviewing a long recording, something that's 40 minutes, you may just want to view it at 2x playback speed to cut the time down. So here on the right, you'll be able to adjust the playback speed of your video as you're proofing it. And probably one of the most major enhancements that we've introduced that seems minor is going to be the concept of safe zones. So if you're not familiar with what safe zones are, within each video, you have an action safe and a title safe area. The action safe area, kind of self-explanatory, it's where your video is going to cut off or crop off at. So you want to make sure everything that you want to be shown is in the action safe area. Title safe area is where you want all of your title cards to be. And traditionally, before we've introduced this feature in Ziflow, you'll usually need to load up your video into a different software. Um, Premiere, Avid, whatever it may be, Final Cut Pro, so that you can see what the action safe and title safe areas are. But what we've allowed you to do is now you can actually proof the video with these areas applied. So here, this is a 9:16 video, and I can choose to proof the video as these safe zones are applied, so I can make sure everything is incorporated correctly into my action safe or title safe areas. One other helpful aspect of this is you may have noticed we have different aspect ratios here. 1:1, 4:3, 9:16, 16:9, a number of different aspect ratios. What we've heard from a lot of our video production clients is now they're being asked to output the same video in multiple formats. The same video that they're going to use for the 30-second spot is going to be outputted for a social video, is going to be pushed towards a different platform. So they need to know what this video is going to look like if they were to output it into a 4:3, for instance, or a 1:1 for social. So not only can you view the safe zones for that aspect ratio, but what you can also do is you can mask the areas that would get clipped or cropped as you output into other aspect ratios. So now from the video production side, you don't need to generate a 1:1 video. You can review this video with the 1:1 aspect ratio and the other areas masked, or you can choose to view it unmasked as well. So really helpful to keep you inside the proof rather than needing to exit out of the proof and move into another system just to view things like safe zones, or just to view things like, or just to mask certain areas with the different aspect ratios. Okay, so those are some of the video proofing enhancements that we've made. So just to recap really quickly, some of the key enhancements are going to be your ability to adjust the time format and have that reflected not only in the playback, but in your comments. You'll also be able to control the playback speed, so you can slow down playback to a quarter speed or speed it all the way up to 2x. And the most helpful that I personally find is the ability to apply safe zones with different aspect ratios and to mask areas dependent on the aspect ratio as well. And one of the huge ones that we've introduced, moving to a different video that'll highlight this better, is, and Mike touched on this earlier, auto comparison amongst videos. Now, we've always had auto comparisons for static files, PDFs, images, PowerPoint, Photoshop, Illustrator. We've also introduced auto comparison for videos as well. This is a great video that I always like to use to highlight auto comparison for videos. It's a spot the difference video. The great thing of how auto comparison works within Ziflow for videos is you can play your videos with the auto comparison on, and it'll essentially play it with this. So as things are changing in the frame itself, it's going to continue to highlight those. a really great way for you to spot whether any changes were being made. So for your auto comparisons, you actually don't need to stop it on a specific frame, turn on the auto comparison for that frame, turn it off, continue playing the video. You can simply play your video with auto comparison on for it to highlight any changes on a frame by frame level. Of course, you can obviously turn it on, turn it off as you navigate to specific frames, but there's no need for that because you can actually have the videos play while auto comparison's turned on. This has saved our video editors a ton of time because now it becomes easier to spot the differences between the different versions of the video. Okay, now those are some of the core video proofing enhancements that we've made, or our advanced video proofing capabilities that we've introduced in the last year. Another area that I want to talk about is intake forms. Intake forms, again, is one of my favorite things within Ziflow. It helps you streamline the process in a couple of different ways. If you're not sure how to use intake forms, or if you haven't used intake forms yet, but you're interested in using intake forms, or if you just like a demo to it, feel free to reach out to your account manager in Ziflow, and we'd be happy to help show you how you can get the most value out of intake forms. But let's talk about the enhancements that we introduced here. This is a screenshot, but I'll explain why. One of the concepts that we've introduced with intake form is submitter validation. This allows us to do two things with the intake form. By using submitter validation, you can ensure that the person submitting a file via the intake form is who they say they are, because it requires a multi-factor authentication before they can access the intake form. So first they have to input their email address, then they'll actually receive an email with a token that they have to input before they even get access to your form itself. Think of it as a nice security layer for your form, so you know exactly who is accessing your form and they are who they say they are. Once they've gotten access to the form, the intake form works very much the same. They can come in, fill in any metadata that you want to associate with the form. These can be drop down, free form text, multi-select list. You can build and customize the forms however you need. What the validation also has allowed us to do is now you can actually allow submitters to create new versions directly from the form itself. They can do this even without a user account in Ziflow. If you're working with an external vendor or agency that may be producing your assets for you and you want to give them the ability to submit via intake form, you absolutely can. With this new feature, you can also allow them to create new versions on their submissions without requiring them to have a user license. All they have to do is validate their email on the form, and now they'll have a checkbox to create new version here. It'll show them all the proofs that they've submitted previously so they can select which one they want to submit on top of or version on top of. So now you're extending versioning capability onto your intake forms to make it even easier for your external parties that may not have Ziflow licenses to submit content to you, really taking out the time in the process where they have to send that version to someone else and that other person needs to create that new version for them. What happens in the background is still the same. The Zybot will go and apply your specified workflow to it, but what they can do is they can pick the ones that it needs to version on, so you don't have to reconnect those versions within Ziflow. They're doing it directly from form submission itself. And then finally, the enhanced workflow. As I said earlier, if you're not using the workflow, I highly recommend you use the workflow. If you aren't sure how to set up your workflow, shoot me an email, give me a call. I love workflow, so I would be more than happy to talk through your workflow with you and figure out the best setup and configuration. We've introduced a lot of new features to the workflows over the last year, but the one I want to talk about today is skip on new version. This is one of our latest features within the workflow itself. And I would say probably one of the least used features, but the one where you can get the most gains in efficiency and benefits. It really is kind of self-intuitive here. So what this setting allows you to do is you can choose the criteria when a stage in your workflow is skipped on a new version. Here you can say whether it should never be skipped. Let's skip it when it's approved or approved with changes, or when all decisions have been made or completed. So you can define the criteria that that chooses when this when the stage on this proof gets skipped on the new version. A really typical example here is I have a multi-stage workflow. First copy reviews it, then design reviews it. In the proof that I'm showing, copy has approved this. So the copy team has reviewed this proof and they've gone ahead and said that it's approved and it moved to the design stage. The design stage has said that changes are required, so they want to make that change. If you're not skipping on new version, as you're creating a new version, what it's going to do is it's going to start at the very top of the workflow again. So the copy team is going to need to review it. And then once they have approved it again, it'll make it to the design stage. Now, you may not need copy to review it again because copy is responsible for reviewing copy and design is responsible for reviewing design. So once copy has approved it, then they don't need to take a look at it again. And that's where skip on new version becomes really powerful. So let's go ahead and take a look at this in action. If I was to create a new version, it's going to pull my workflow forward from the previous version. Let me go ahead and just upload a file here. But what you'll notice is under the copy stage, it lets me know this stage will be skipped. Reviewers will not be notified about this proof version because the previous status is approved. So rather than having my workflow start at the very top again, going through copy, going through design, and unnecessarily waiting for the copy team to approve it again, we can bypass that stage and jump automatically to design. So the skip on new version allows you to really find efficiencies in your workflow and maybe skip reviewers if they've already made decisions. This is flexible though. If it turns out that I don't need to use the skip, and what I could do is I can disable it as I create new versions as well. So here I can really adjust and customize the workflow as I'm applying it. You can build this into your template, but as with any of the workflow templates, you can change it as an as needed basis. I'm not going to turn this off for now, but if you don't want to skip for this particular project, you can just very quickly switch to this to never. But let's see the skip in action. So this stage will be skipped. Reviewers will not be notified about this proof version because the previous state is approved. And if I go ahead and hit create, now I can see on V2 of this proof, my copy stage is skipped. And once this proof finishes processing, it's automatically going to take my design stage and move it into in progress for me. So it'll automatically start my design stage. You can cascade this as well. So I can have copy skip, design skip, account management skip, and we can keep skipping down the chain. So it can jump all three of these and jump right into the client review stage, for instance. But skip on new version, as you can see, copy is automatically approved because it was approved in the previous version. And now design actually moved to in progress automatically because the copy stage was approved on that previous version. So you get massive time savings and efficiencies here as you start figuring out which parts of your workflow become redundant or which parts you can skip on new versions as necessary. Okay, I think I have talked enough for now, and I covered over a couple core things: our advanced video proofing enhancements, our intake form enhancements, and our workflow enhancements. So wanted to pause and see if there were any questions here. So Mike, probably should hand off back to you just so we can coordinate the Q&A.
Sure. Thanks, Will. That was great, by the way. Thank you so much. So yeah, I want to go ahead and open up the Q&A. It looks like we've had a few questions that came in through, and like I said, my colleague Will likes to fly by the seat of his pants and answer them in progress. We had a couple of questions about folder management. An additional question, Will, this might be a good one for you since you just talked about workflow. How does skip stages affect having more than one, having more the same user on multiple stages?
It really has no impact. So if I am a reviewer on multiple stages and my first stage is skipped, it'll essentially treat my second stage that I'm on that wasn't skipped when I get there as the first stage that gets activated. So the skip stages will actually automatically factor in the logic of you being on multiple stages. So you can absolutely feel free to add the same reviewer to multiple stages.
Great. And having having the same reviewer on multiple stages is a super powerful capability that if you're not already using, you definitely should. It looks like probably, I'm guessing our audience is trying to consume everything we've thrown at them in the last 45 minutes, because that's actually the last of the questions. So I wanted to put actually up on screen, let me go full screen, sorry about that. I wanted to put the customer success email address in front of everyone here today. If you want to learn more about any of these or any other Ziflow feature as well that either you're curious about, that maybe even you're struggling with, please do email us at customersuccess@ziflow.com. Will and I are both on that distribution list, and Will get someone on from his team to coordinate some help for you. We're happy to help, whether you're a customer, whether you're in a trial. We'd love to know how we can help with your review and approval process. And I don't think we've had any other questions pop in. So I'm going to leave this email address. I'm going to leave that with everyone on the call. That's where you should reach out to if you come up with questions after today's presentation. You will receive a copy of today's presentation. So as you kind of go through that, please do reach out if you have any questions. And I think at that point, I think I'm going to call it a day, and thank everyone for attending. Will, thank you so much for your awesome demo and insights. Always appreciated. And I want to thank everyone for attending, and I hope everyone has a great day.